Joanne Sklar. I had a question. It was in this presentation about Common Core, but since you had mentioned Common Core, I thought I could just bring it up. Okay, so the last budget meetings, it was shown as about $1 million cost for implementing Common Core. I know about 25 to 30% of that was due to the textbooks, which I know you had mentioned was a significant cost. Just wondering, is that going to be, you think, $1 million per year as a result of Common Core? Or maybe there'll be a decrease next year as a result of the textbooks? Or we have no idea because they keep us surprised. I don't know.
That last one's good. And I do want to say that the $1 million is just what we refer to as easily identifiable costs. So there are other costs, lost instructional time, staffing costs that are really rather significant. But managing to identify those is somewhat different and difficult. But that $1 million, it could go up, it could go down. Part of it does have to do with the amount of AIS staff that we need, depending on where the cut score is, because we had to add over $1 million worth of staffing this year as a result of the scores that the kids received last year when they changed the score needed to pass. So it's a bit nebulous for us, but that's the best we can do with the information that we currently have.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Anyone else in the audience have any questions they wanted to raise regarding the budget? Okay, I'll turn the meeting back over to Peter Wunsch.
Thank you. Hopefully I can get through this. Before we get to the rest of the agenda, does anyone have any questions or comments on any of the other agenda items?
Quick question under the legal item. Legal B, looking to approve a confidentiality agreement. Can you brief us on, without giving away what it's all about, what the topic is that you guys are signing a confidentiality agreement about?
For this one, I will ask Mr. Bronowski to respond.
Sure. It's an agreement preparatory to settlement discussions. In the course of litigation, in exchange, in seeking a settlement, oftentimes parties have to exchange confidential information. In this case, that's exactly what it is. It's a confidentiality agreement which may serve as a condition precedent to a settlement.
For an employment matter, for somebody suing the district matter?
It's a pending litigation involving the district.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Anyone else? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the April 10th Board of Ed meeting and the April 24th Board of Ed meeting? Motion made by Mr. Hartman, seconded by Mrs. Masiello. Discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Can I get a motion to approve the personnel as attached? Motion made by Mrs. Goober, seconded by Mr. Tampolini. Discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. We have no correspondence. We have no old business. Can I get a motion to accept all of the bids under A and B? I'll make the motion, seconded by Mr. Hartman. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. I'm going to do the same thing. New business. A, all of those Burton, Baron, Smith for $58 and change, and one's for $84. A couple Park East. I'll only go through the Park East one. Can I get a motion to approve, to accept those? Motion made by Mr. Hartman, seconded by Mrs. Goober. Discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Can I get a motion to approve payment 13 for Johnson Controls in the amount of $934,066 for application and certificate payment in connection with the energy performance projects? I'll make the motion. Seconded by Mrs. Goober. Discussion. Yes, go ahead.
Can you just give us a little clarification Sure, that payment is in relation to the energy performance contracts. As we're nearing completion and significant amounts of work are being done, they are reviewed not only by Mr. Strand's office, the architects, and then signed off and forwarded to the banks.
All in favor? Passed unanimously. Can I get a motion to approve payment number 12 in the amount of $155,393 for application in connection with the energy performance projects? Motion made by Mr. Tampolini, seconded by Mr. Hartman. Discussion? Same answer, Mrs. Newman?
Same answer, yes.
Okay. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Can I get a motion to approve the 2013-14 health services contract with the following providers and authorize the president of the board to sign same? I'll make the motion, seconded by Mrs. Masiello. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Can I get a motion to approve all of the 6 agreements attached and authorize the president of the board to sign same? Motion made by Mrs. Masiello, seconded by Mrs. Goober. Discussion? All in favor?
Excuse me, are we on C?
Yeah.
C, yes.
I just have a couple of questions.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
With respect to the first contract with like Ayers Caribbean Corporation, what is that about? Because I find it funny that we're contracting with somebody in the Virgin Islands. Was there not somebody here in the tri-state area that we could have contracted for these services?
Without being sarcastic, I will say it is a U.S. territory. It's not a part of a foreign country. No, I mean, it does make a difference.
That's not the point. It's not around the corner, is my point.
We're going to have to look at that. I believe it has to do with they're an authorized provider of said service by the IB Corporation, but we can certainly provide you a more specific response.
Do we need to?
Well, I also have a question because the contract looks like the services are provided in February. We're only approving it now. This is May. So what are we doing? We're doing it after the fact?
Mrs. Niven?
I'm going to have to defer to the department that had requested the contract and respond at a later date once we have those answers.
Well,
would you like to make a motion to table this,
I'd
Mr. Tampolini?
like to table this one, yeah, for sure.
I'll second the table motion. All in favor of tabling? All right. Tabled unanimously. And then items 2 to 6, can we get a vote?
Well,
no. I'm sorry. Continue.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Also, number 5, also another consulting agreement. It looks like a company out in California we're contracting with. Again, the same question. What is this for? And why don't we have somebody in the tri-state area a little closer that we can contract with these services? And not that it's a lot of money. I just find it odd that we're contracting with companies that are so far away. I'm sorry.
We will look. We will get that information.
Okay, well then I'll table that too. I think this is another contract that may have been April. But I have no problem, I don't think, with 2, 3, and 4, and 6.
Does someone want to second the table? Ms. Goober? All in favor of tabling? Opposed? Can we then approve? Are you fine with the others, Mr. Tampolini?
Yeah, Judge.
2, 3, 4, and 6. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Can we get a motion to accept the following donations? Donation of $1,000 for our Intel Science Talent Search semifinalist win. The funds are to be deposited into the trust and agency account code TA038.33 to be used next year to support the supply equipment needs for the science research program at Commack High School. Donation in the amount of $1,000 from Lowe's Corporation to be used for materials and supplies for the organic garden at Commack High School. Donation in the amount of $1,300 from Mandrakia Sawmill Intermediate School PTA for brand new games for classrooms at Mandrakia Sawmill. Donation in the amount of $2,500 from Mandrakia Sawmill to be applied to a grade 3 and $2,500 to be applied to a grade 4 field trips. Total $5,000. I'll make the motion, seconded by Mrs. Masiello. And as usual, the support of the people and the companies in this, and the PTAs, I don't want to leave them out, in this community are amazing. All in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Can I get a motion to approve the Western Suffolk BOCES Wireless Project Proposal 2013-2147 under 2013-14 funding measure? Motion made by Mrs. Masiello, seconded by Mrs. Goober. All in favor? I'll make it, I think. Can I get a motion to approve the following field trip, Commack High School to Soho Galleries, with the address listed? I'll make the motion, seconded by Mr. Tampolini. Discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Can I get a motion to approve the resolution for the district to participate in a purchasing cooperative granting Eastern Suffolk BOCES the authority to act on the district's behalf to prepare and solicit bids and RFPs? Excuse me. Motion made by Mrs. Cooper, seconded by Mrs. Masiello. Discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Can I get a motion, can we acknowledge receipt of the statement of services rendered on non-retainer matters in the amount of $19,080.11 for the period ending March 30, 2014, submitted by Lana Barnowski? I'll make the motion, seconded by Mrs. Goober. Discussion?
I have a comment, please.
Go ahead.
All right, two things. I'm just going to note the continued block billing that I've repeatedly asked to be ceased. It seems to continue. In addition, I just want to make a comment. There is a bill here for slightly over $4,000 for the services that Mr. Bonatsky's firm did at the request of, I assume, somebody on the board, but I had no knowledge of it, requesting an opinion on the budgeting practices of the district. And I take exception with the expense of $4,000 for an opinion that basically told you that something that should be quite evident, which is that you're not allowed to intentionally over budget. The question wasn't whether you could or couldn't do it. The issue I raised was whether or not you were doing it.
No, the right question you raised was, and it wasn't a question, it was a statement that we were illegal in what we were doing. If I can remember correctly, civil and RICO fraud. It was not a question of could we do what we were doing. And that raised what we're doing to a different level. If the question had been raised in an executive session where it would have been a proper subject for executive session, we would not have had to spend that kind of money looking at something. But since it was brought up as a surprise bingo all of a sudden in a public session, it behooved us to look into it to find out if at least the 3 older board members and the administration were violating the laws you have still claimed we're violating.
But this is not this is kind of comical, I think. It's almost equivalent to what Governor Christie did when he hired his own lawyers to investigate himself. And then they came out and said, oh, he did no wrong. But they looked at whatever evidence was provided by Mr. Christie and didn't do any kind of independent investigation on their own. So you're using the district's attorney just to validate your actions. And I think, every dollar we waste on stuff like this is a dollar less that our kids are getting for their education, or should be being spent on their education. And this is, if you wanted to do this, we could have had some kind of forum, but to do it on your own, just...
No, Mr. Tempolini, the correct way to do this would have been to raise it in an executive session where it would have belonged, and he did not, our attorneys did not whitewash anything. They went in with a totally open mind and looked at your citations on your internet blogs that no one has ever questioned First Amendment rights to see if they were valid. And the answers we got were, you didn't understand the accounting and you misconstrued the legal.
Well, I find it quite odd that, and I can't, this report can't be revealed, but it's quite telling, I think, that there's no mention of the contingency memo that I noted in my article and what I've discussed in this meeting. Mr. Bonatsky never even addressed it. He basically says in his memo that the information is based on what he was told by the districts and the representation made by the district. He did no independent investigation on his own, and it's not his fault. He does what he's told to do. I think it's the board's fault for directing...
I take great offense at that, Mr. Tampolini. You are insinuating that I told Mr. Barnowski to go out and whitewash this, and that I have a major issue with.
Okay. Do we know? Okay.
Can we get a motion to
And Mr.
accept?
Santolini, I take some exception that you suggested I do what I'm told to do. I exercise my independent professional judgment on this, but you're quite correct. And I think at the beginning of your remarks you said, I did not conduct an investigation. I think I laid forth for the Board of Education a balanced and fair-minded report on the state of the law. I am not an auditor or a forensic investigator. I think a fair reading of my report to this board, it was a statement of the black letter law, which I think the board, and I was requested by the superintendent and the president of the board to do so. And I think it was a fair-minded research of the applicable law, and I think if you read it carefully, and I know you have, that it had many, clauses that said, I've been advised by the administration that this is the way it was done. I'm not capable of going into the books and auditing them.
No, I understand. That's exactly my point.
And also, let's make a point that as a board, when someone makes statements to the public, guiding their minds to believe that we are guilty of fraudulent or illegal behavior, it's actually the responsibility of the board to restore the level of trust that would accommodate us being seen in another light. Certainly there's disagreement, and I think that disagreement continues, but we would not be, I believe, responsible if we did not make an effort to make sure that we spoke on behalf of the board in terms of our being put under that light.
And the analogy to Chris Christie's lawyers is totally disingenuous, because as you know, they were investigators. They were investigating the facts. I did not investigate the facts. I laid forth a memorandum of law as the applicable law.
Can we get a motion to acknowledge receipt?
Yes.
Aye. Any opposed? All in favor? Then all five of us are in favor of acknowledging receipt. Can I get a motion to accept the attached confidentiality agreement and have the president of the board sign the same? I'll make the motion, seconded by Mr. Hartman. Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Can I get a motion to accept receipt of items Roman numeral 11, A, B, and C? I'll make the motion, seconded by Mr. Tempolini. Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Can I get a motion to accept the teacher incentive award of $250 for the 2013-14 school year from the Commack Retired Teachers Association? I'll make the motion, seconded by Mrs. Goober. Discussion, I'd like to thank the retired teachers. Besides doing a phenomenal job for our students over the years, they're still out there supporting us, and I thank them for that. All in favor? Passed unanimously. I hope I can get through this one. I know. Can I get a motion to approve the following resolution? Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Commack Union Free District shall hold a regular meeting on Tuesday, May 20th at 9 p.m. at Hub's Administration Center, Clay Pitts. A board member will be participating in this meeting via video conference. He will be located in the lobby of Mercure Wien Biedermeier, 28 Landstraße Hauptstraße, Vienna, Austria. It is anticipated that the board will make a motion for the purpose of adjourning into executive session at the time, and at approximately 10 p.m. Eastern Time, the board will reconvene in public session to declare the results of the annual budget vote trustee election. The public may attend the meeting either at Hub's Administration Center in East Northport or at Mercure Wien Biedermeier, 28 Landstraße Hauptstraße, I hope I got that right, in Vienna, Austria. Motion made by Mr. Hartman, seconded by Mrs. Goober. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I don't think Mrs. Cooper said that. Did she? I'm sure.
Yeah.
No, I just hope that other people join.
Especially in Vienna.
I will probably be dressed in my pajamas because it'll be 4 a.m. there, but you're more than welcome to join. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Commack Union Free District shall hold its regular meeting on Thursday, June 12th at 6:30 p.m. at Commack High School. It is anticipated that the Board of Ed will make a motion for the purpose of adjourning into exec session. At this time and at 7:30, the Board will reconvene in public session for the purpose of holding its regular business meeting. Motion made by Mr. Tempolini, seconded by Mrs. Masiello. Discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. The Board of Education will announce that the Board of Education announced the hours and location for the annual budget vote trustee election on Tuesday, May 20th, 2014, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Commack High School and Commack Middle School. And that's just an announcement. The Board of Education is requested to adopt the following Board of Ed meeting dates for the 2014-15 school year as attached. I am not reading them. All in favor? Motion made by Mrs. Masiello, seconded by Mrs. Goober. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
Peter, we need a motion for the May 22nd.
Oh, okay, go ahead. You make the motion. You make it.
I make a motion that what are we doing?
No, the board will meet in executive session.
Executive session on May 22nd.
We'll meet in public session
Okay.
and immediately adjourn into executive session.
It is anticipated that the board will, the same language as the prior motions.
On May 22nd at 6:30 p.m. For purposes of adjourning into executive session, I'll make the motion, seconded by Mrs. Goober. Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Okay. The administration recommends that the Board of Ed conduct the first reading of Board Policy Number 1501, communication between the community and board members, and I will, again, attempt to read the policy. Individuals who wish to communicate with the Board of Education of the Commack Union Free School District, the board as a whole, or with any individual member of the board must either email the board through the official board email account, boe@commack.k12.ny.us, or by U.S. mail by addressing the correspondence to the district clerk. Emails to any other account will not be considered official communications to the board or the district. If the member of the board receives an email about district matters to an individual email address, the board member will immediately forward such email to the board email account. All board email correspondence between board members, staff, and administration must use the Commack hosted web address. In all correspondence related to board or district matters, board members must adhere to all related laws, including but not limited to laws governing confidential information about employees or students. No other email to individual BOE members to account. No other email.
That's already in.
That's already in. Okay, I'm sorry. Just be modified. I'll make the motion. Oh, wait a minute. Excuse me. Do we have to untable this first? Because this was tabled last month. I don't want to mess this up, procedural. So what's the process for this?
Motion to remove from the table.
And who has to, anybody?
Anybody.
I'll make the motion to untable, seconded by Mr. Hartman. All in favor of untabling?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Now we have the motion for the first reading. I'll make the motion, seconded by Mr. Hartman. Discussion.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I mean, what is the purpose of this? I have a couple of issues here. First, how do we, as elected officials, tell the taxpayers of our community that they can't communicate with us directly if they so desire? What
We're telling them they can communicate with us as board members, not as individual board members. We don't act individually. We're a group.
But they can do as they please. We have no rights over the citizens of this country to tell them how they want to contact us. If they choose to contact us individually, then that's their choice. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I just don't understand how. Well,
actually, the purpose of the policy is really in reverse. The purpose of the policy is saying that individual board members should not be contacting individuals in the community as a board member only.
How do you make that distinguishment?
Excuse me?
How do you make that distinguishment when somebody's contacting us under there?
Because I know for a fact that there has been at least one notified leak of something on a legal issue where someone communicated directly with the person who was threatening to sue us, giving out our personal email addresses, and that can't happen.
No, you're missing my question, I guess. My point is, how do you know in what capacity somebody's communicating to somebody else? If Ms. Goober is writing to a friend of hers and they're talking about something that may be school-related, how would you possibly determine whether or not she's doing it in her capacity as a board member or in her capacity as a citizen?
When someone gives out my personal board email address, they are not doing it individually. They are doing it as a board member. If I'm communicating with the person sitting in that seat, me and them, yeah, maybe. But when someone gives out my email address, that can't happen.
Well, and actually, this whole making it more complicated than it has to be is that what we're trying to do is make sure, for instance, someone could communicate with an individual board member about something rather serious. They might actually send it to a more private email, and they will consider themselves having let the board know. Now, if they want to keep their own personal conversations with personal board members, that is not something that we can actually dictate. But we certainly would not want, for instance, someone to communicate with an individual board member about some kind of health, safety, student risk. And perhaps that board member sees this, maybe they respond, maybe they do not, maybe they wait. Nothing like that should ever happen. So anything that goes to board business, district matters, should be clearly defined so that no one is under the assumption, oh, I've already told the board because I told one person. That person must tell us, and that board member must tell us, is what the policy says. And anyone who thinks that they're directly communicating with the board by talking to one person should be made aware that if they address the proper procedure, they will be communicating with the entire board. This does not eliminate private conversations. It doesn't eliminate people having issues that they choose to discuss, and it ends up on an email. But the idea is anything that has to do with the district matters, and certainly things that have to do with children, should have a specific pathway so that it's perfectly clear. Anyone who receives something as a board person must move it forward, and anyone who's trying to impact the district knows that should be through the total 5 of us, not one person.
And it has to go through the Commack email address system. There's no control over this. If it's going through Yahoo, AOL, Gmail, anything else that's out there, I don't even know what all those others are.
That's fine. My point, though, here, I think being missed, is, I've been an advocate of trying to get each of our individual emails on the website, not just one email for the Board of Ed. If somebody wants to say something to Ms. Goober because they feel comfortable talking to Ms. Goober, they shouldn't be forced to send it to everybody on this board. And also, to the extent somebody has a complaint, maybe something about one of us or somebody in administration, they should be, free to contact one of us in confidence and say, look, I think somebody's doing something wrong here, or whatever it is, and then that duty now is on the board member to then go to his other board members and say, this is what's going on. By having one Board of Ed address for all 5 of us, that kind of defeats that whole purpose, and I don't see the point of this. So I frankly think this is really unnecessary.
Jim, the only thing I would say is that, to reinforce what Peter said, is that even though Peter's the president, he is a board member. There's 5 of us. If one of us is doing wrong, I like to not know something is going on. I don't, if someone's accusing someone of doing something impropriety, all 5 board members should know. I mean,
yeah, but
what would prevent if Mrs. Gruber mentioned something to basically take my email address off the list and not let me be aware of the issue?
No, but the point is, Steve, if someone says, look, I'm doing something wrong, they're not going to send an email to you, all 5 of us, and letting me know that they're
That might be the
it.
only exception, is if somebody was doing something illegal, but I think you're carrying this to an extreme.
Well, how do you get around it then? The way this is written, there's no exceptions for being able to get to somebody. That nobody can write to anybody on the board using an individual email address. I think only
But you know what?
to write to a Commack
That's
address.
actually not true. They can write to you. But actually, in another level, how about somebody thinks they've sent something to me from their email address? Now, I don't open up everything because lately, if you're not familiar with some of the addresses, you open it up, you're opening up a whole other whatever. And therefore, this kind of thing that you want to leave open allows that person to think they've told me. I didn't even open it up. Therefore, something that really should be addressed will not be addressed because I protect my virus issues in my computer by not opening it. So if you just make the pathway clear, any other really emergency kinds of issues, I don't know, we've been in a district for quite some time. I don't recall this having been such a big issue. I don't know if you see this in the future, Mr. Tampolini, but the idea that this be set up as policy basically divides the board, and it perhaps could eliminate some vital information being stuck in one spot.
Well, all I'm saying is that if you're going to do something like this, I think you need to have individual board members' Commack addresses available to the extent somebody in the community wants to send something to them. Now, if you get under the scenario you just said, if you get an email sent to your Commack, Mary Jo address, and you don't read it, well, they made the notification. It's not like they sent it to your Yahoo address, but to send it just to...
They could still send a snail mail letter to Hubs. Email addresses have to maintain this confidentiality. Someone gave out all of our addresses, and because of the way it transpired, you know what happened. I responded all, not realizing that there was someone in the community, and almost got us into a major, major legal battle because somebody leaked our addresses, and that can't happen.
I'm going to call for a vote, Peter.
Thank you.
All
in favor?
Are we even voting?
No.
Yeah, it's the first reading. We're voting of accepting the first reading. If the 5 of us accept it, it's policy. All in favor? Opposed?
I am opposed.
Okay, so it's 4-1. We'll have a second reading next month. Before I open the mic up for comments, I just have one other, and looking in the audience, I know everybody here knows this. Meet the Candidates Night is next Wednesday here at Sawmill at 8 p.m. Okay, go ahead. Call for comments to the board first.
I don't have a long drawn-out speech, but I want to say that in 12 days we have our election, and I know last year there was, I'd say the word, a lot of duress that occurred during that day, and I would ask that during the upcoming day, May 20th, that the 4 candidates and Mary Jo, just use the word civility between each other and other people around. There were young kids around, my children included, other board members around. I really ask that people try to act as civil as possible to each other. We can agree to disagree, but our main focus should be on education and giving our kids the best education possible. I have many friends who were disappointed, and I had to reconvince them to come out and vote this year because they said it was actually, the word they used was the disgrace, the amount of language that was used, the yelling, the screaming, and everything that occurred on both sites. So I would applaud that everyone this year act, with some level of civility coming up.
Thank you, I agree. Anyone else on the board? Anyone else, please? Anyone else have any questions or comments tonight?
Yeah, I wanted just what Jim brought up. So if I wanted to contact, I'm trying to figure out this new rule. So I wanted to contact one of these individuals, just because I feel more comfortable speaking maybe to Debbie or to Peter. Am I still able to do that?
You can.
I can't stop you from doing it, but she should automatically be notifying the other 4 of us of the issue.
The attempt here.
No, I understand what you're saying. If I want something brought to the board's attention as official business, I need to send it to the BO, to the main website, the main email.
Right.
But let's say I wanted to speak to Steve and get his take on something.
Why wouldn't you just ask him for his email address and then he could give that to you? Right? Absolutely. We're not trying to restrict.
We can't restrict you from doing that.
Yes.
Yeah, but you're restricting the board. Your policy says the board member can't communicate with them over school policy without letting everybody else know.
Correct. At
That's my whole point.
Your own.
That defeats the whole purpose. You can't have it one
That's
way
our
and not the
policy.
other.
But actually, that's not, no, let's not be, we're not that specific that somebody cannot come to a board member, communicate actually, or ask them for their email or their phone number. In the old days, we all got phone calls and various things, but each time, especially when it was a serious matter, sometimes it was a venting, sometimes it was, how do I handle this? And the board member would then report back that they advised somebody along this way, that there was an issue here and there. I really don't know why the idea that we are unapproachable should be the definition of what this policy is. This policy is just to clear up the responsibility of board members to handle district matters on a board, as a board, and the understanding of people to know if you want something attended to on a district level, this is the path that you take. It's not this exclusivity or inclusivity. It's just a matter of making sure that, as in the case with Peter, things occurred out of line of our procedure that we just described, and it really caused a bit of havoc, and we should not have ourselves be communicating that way. It's not taking ultimate abilities to communicate away from people.
Why now? This has been going on.
Because that issue happened 2 months ago, and you tabled this policy last month, and we're discussing it now. And I'm doing this to protect the board going forward, because I won't be here after next month.
I think it doesn't matter of order. Next month will be another opportunity.
Yeah. Jared?
Jared Behar. First, I wanted to just touch on what Steve said. I think during budget season, we talk so much about money and numbers that the fact that the focus should be on education does get lost. So I think Steve's point is well taken, and I applaud him for saying that. Second of all, I find it a little distressing that we're going to question a bill for looking into something when somebody raises an issue that, at least in my opinion, as a licensed attorney in New York, you should know probably has no basis, but is going to go ahead and launch it at a public meeting, and then, instead of not taking it seriously, the board says, you know what, let's look into this and let's see if it's valid or invalid. They get an opinion from an attorney who says, okay, no, everything's okay, and then you're going to say, no, I don't think we should pay for that, and we're taking money out of our kids' education for an issue that was raised in the first place that had no basis in fact or law, and that is something that you should have known. So I find it incredibly distressing that not only are you going to make a statement that it's comical, but you're going to play the card that it's taking money out of our kids' education. Anyone's taking money out of our kids' education is bringing up that silly point in the first place. So I find it incredibly disingenuous, and I think it's very distressing that on top of that we're now going to question the fact that the bill had to be paid. I'm sorry, but that's below the board.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Teresa Burke. I'm going to follow up with the same point on the attorney bill. My concern first was every month we come and we see this bill, anywhere from 15, 19,000, whatever. Today, after how many years, was the first time it was broken out, or one part of it was broken out. And I think that's the first thing that I appreciate. Is there a way of getting that 19,000, not specifics, but obviously there are certain things that I would have liked to have known $4,000 was done up on one matter. And so is there a way of going forward to let us know?
There are a lot of things on there you can't know about. There's student fair hearings, and I can't tell you it was. You understand that?
But
there's other stuff in there.
Can you break it down, say, example, a blanket thing saying, okay, 4,000 was regarding this issue, 10,000 was regarding a student affair issue. Break it like that.
As somebody who sat through 20 of these budget meetings for the last 20 years, one of the reasons this was put on there was purely for information purposes for the community. It doesn't have to be on there at all. I just want to state that, and I'm not recommending we take it off. But this is the problem of you try to do something nice and it comes back.
Well, it's transparency. That's all I'm doing.
It's what?
To me, it's you guys being more transparent to us. And
I don't understand that word. That's the word that people are using. That we're hiding things. We're not being.
No. I'm not saying you're hiding things. Did I ever say you're hiding things? I thought you guys were doing a great thing by putting that in. You're being more transparent. I think that's great.
But there were 25,000 other bills that we pay in the course of the year that we don't put on.
Teresa, I just want to also explain something. We have a claims auditor. We actually don't pay the bills. And that is as an example. We're merely acknowledging receipt. So we leave that to Mrs. Newman to review, and the bill gets paid. Insofar as breaking down particular things on there, I think it could approach breaching some confidentiality, because although you may not see that as, well, if you just said it's a student hearing, as an example, well, if there's the student and the family, word gets out in the community, people can begin to kind of narrow down, well, who might that be? And we can't do that. So I understand what you're saying, I do. But certain things, transparency, not transparency, it's really our obligation to maintain a level of privacy to protect certainly children, and then, you know, if there's an employee issue, all of that. So I don't see how we could do that.
Then my next question would follow it up. Knowing that $4,000 was spent for this issue, we as the public, do we have the right to know what the resolution was now? Being that obviously
The resolution was what we're doing is legal. And I just want to go back because I didn't respond exactly correctly before, and I'm probably going to jump on Mr. Brownowski's toes. There was nothing to investigate as far as the facts. We all agree exactly what we're doing, how much we're budgeting, how much we're rolling over, how much we're giving back to the community. What's there to investigate?
If I could, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Burke. What I will do is have a conversation with legal and see if there's a way to sort of broadly identify the types of things we pay for. I know we cannot say what we pay for this month, but there are types of things. And so we give you some sense, okay, we had FOIL requests, we had student matters, but we can't identify dollar figures, that's for sure.
And I appreciate
And
that.
I don't even want to promise you that I can do that. I will promise you that I won't talk.
Dr. James,
I've
done that in the past, and I have, on questioning from the microphone, many times over the many years I've been here, said, you know, this year we had a real estate matter, we had, I'm doing this quickly now, off the top of my head, we had 7 grievances filed by the various bargaining units. We had, 4 student disciplinary proceedings. We had, et cetera. I'm doing this off the top of my head. So that's the kind of thing that we can provide. But Mrs. Goober's point is well taken. Under FERPA, the federal statute that protects student privacy, even if you don't name a student, if you identify them, so someone in the community could, with some certainty, identify them, it's a violation of FERPA. So therefore, if I was making this up, and it's not the case, it's hypothetical, if there's only one CSE hearing that month, that could identify illegally a special ed student and violate their rights. So we do have to be careful. And if I could also make one other comment, not only are you not required, because of the internal claims auditor to have this, you're actually, the board has really no jurisdiction over this point. It's purely informational. And you are the only district that I service of the 20 or 30 on Long Island that has this.
Right. And Teresa, the only thing I want to say is the balance of what administration cost is going to come out of it. I mean, if Leonard Pernaska is not going to charge us more money to break it down, I would, we're reviewing all the bills as the board itself. So I think the trust that you put in us should go back. So Jim did his due diligence and brought up to the fact that I'd rather, if they're going to start charging us an extra $1,000 a month to do this breakdown, my personal feeling would be to table it.
And just on that, because I happen to be looking at the 2 CTA executives, and as soon as the grievance come up, no, this is actually a positive for them. I mean, and I'm not even sure whose grievances are in here. The next thing is everybody's going to start asking what the grievances are, and we cannot discuss that in public. That's the reason that they're private grievances. We have a couple of issues that we disagree.
Mr. Watch, you'll note I used the term bargaining units.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Okay.
And by the way, in the last presentation, actually, of the board budget, the legal under 1420 is dropping $23,535 for next year.
Okay, so I will not be responsible for adding another penny to this budget, so I will not be asking for that if it's going to cost us any additional funds.
Thank you.
I will come up here and ask for a similar breakdown at each meeting if I'd like. So I appreciate that.
Thank
And the other question I had is, when the new business number C came up, there was 2 items were tabled, and they were tabled based on their location. Is it possible to have the addresses listed on there? Because I was unaware that one of them, the address, it's just a question whether...
I actually have another comment on that I didn't make before.
Can I say something first, Peter?
Go ahead.
Most of the motions and most of them. But anyway, the idea is IB is an international organization. So they have headquarters specifically for different types of attention in various locations. Maybe New York is not the greatest place for them to be located with some of the things that we considered here about bringing business in. But this is an international organization. For them to be anywhere else in the world is not so uncommon. And of course, again, it's not that far away, but it is something that is part of the global network that these people have.
It could also be that the headquarters...
Yes or no? yes, we can do it, or no, we can't, or you want to look at it?
That could be just the
We're-
bill,
we're-
and actually the person lives in Trenton.
We'll look
Okay,
at, well,
I appreciate it.
But I do have to make another comment on this. This is something I would probably have said next month, but since the three people who are running for this seat are sitting here, I'll make the statement tonight to whichever one of the three of you wins, and I wish you all good luck. One of the things I have done for the last 35 months when I get the agenda is I make a list of questions and comments and I send it to the superintendent last Friday. That is the proper way to address an issue like this, rather than dropping the bombs in the ballroom, in the boardroom, as some people have been doing. Thank you.
So what we will do is look at that and certainly let you know, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. And then just the final question. Regarding this, the taping that's going to be happening in, I give you credit for naming this place.
Video, not taping,
The
video conference.
The video conference. Is there a cost to us for that?
No,
Okay.
I'm doing it by FaceTime on my iPad. So it's the battery power of whoever iPad is going to be sitting at home.
That's it. Thank you.
No.
My personal iPad.
Your first.
Steve,
No incumbents to the district will incur for the video game.
not videotaping, video conferencing.
Yep. Video.
In essence, we're
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
FaceTiming this one.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You will see it. No, you have to see it.
We have to,
Yeah, that's part of the video. You have to really see my face to know that I'm in it. Okay, sorry, Ginny.
I know that since, I guess this question is for you, Mrs. Anthony, since you published your blog, I know that the rest of the board has obviously taken steps to, find out if everything that you were accused of was actually true or not true. What process have you taken since you made the accusations to prove your theory, or is it just accusations at this point?
Whatever I wrote was based on prior investigation and talking to the controller's office and reading the controller's reports. The controller's office makes it crystal clear, and I don't care what anybody says here at this district, that you cannot have more than 4% at the end of the year. And that includes not only the unreserved fund, but any money that you're going to roll over to the next year. The only way this is going to get settled, in my view, is if a controller comes in here and does an audit. And if I'm wrong, I guess I'll have to eat crow and apologize.
No, actually, I'll take that one step further. I'll take that one step further, Mr. Tempolini. You sent me an email 2 months ago saying that because you're right, I should resign. Will you make the statement that if the controller comes in and says that you're wrong, you will resign?
Yeah.
Well, my question is,
well, can I add that we've had the controller in here many times.
Sorry?
over
you
the
spoke
years.
to the New York State
State Controller's Office, right here.
So he's aware of what you think is going on, and they haven't made any moves to come in and investigate?
Well, they have a system in place in which they determine how they're going to do audits.
Has the board received any type of formal?
No.
No, so.
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, okay. So
It could be in the pipeline. We have no idea. They're not going to let us know until they decide to come and do an audit, if they even do it.
It's
in
a
the
weird...
past with other districts that have gotten in trouble for, Smithtown escrow and stuff like that. You hear about it. The controller's office comes in. They take care of it. I'm just wondering why they would be sitting back and just waiting if there was an actual problem.
It is the controller's office.
I will say that thank you, Mrs. Idrella. We continuously do reviews of comptrollers' audit reports. One was recently released for the New Rochelle School District. And in that report, and what we do every time we review these reports is we, based on the conversations we've been having here, is try to determine whether our practices mirror the districts that are being criticized. And in every case, they do not mirror the practices of those districts being criticized until we saw the New Rochelle report. Although the New Rochelle report, they were criticized for, and we mirror them in a lot of ways with regard to the size of our budget, the amount to which they underspend their budget, and the amount that they apply moving forward each year. And the comptroller there warned that they would risk fiscal stress if they continued their current practices, although I will say they're about 2 years ahead of us. But moving forward, we need to be very careful about that. And it's our duty, it's my duty, and Mrs. Newman's duty, to review those reports and try to determine whether or not we mirror those districts. The districts that typically get criticized underspend their budget by anywhere between 7 to 12%, and we typically underspend ours between 2.5% and 4%, which is what New Rochelle has spent their budget. So we will continue to do those analysis. You should know we do file all of our audited financials with the Comptroller's Office every year. They are also filed with the State Education Department, and they are audited by independent auditors. So there is a tremendous amount of oversight on this matter, and the legal opinion is that we do not, in any circumstances, break any laws. I just can't let that go without stating such.
Thank you. Anyone else?
You getting up?
Go ahead, Mr. Fusco.
You want to go? Because I got to change this.
Mr. Fusco,
Let's go.
In November of 2013, you adopted a resolution against high-stakes testing. So now we have a lot of test refusals. That's parents standing up for their children against high-stakes testing. That's the only way we can be heard at this point. We've tried so many different ways. The numbers matter. Commack has refused to give us the numbers. And we'd like to know why.
We've refused to give you what numbers?
Refused on the numbers.
So refused to give you the number of kids who opt out of the test?
Correct.
Well,
Over half the districts on Long Island reported to Newsday. Almost more than 90% of the districts reported to Long Island Outlet.
well, the districts didn't report to Long Island opt-out.
No, but over half reported to Newsday.
Over half reported to Newsday, and we were a district that did not and will not, for any number of reasons, not the least of which has to do with we need to verify numbers. There are kids that are not involved in the assessment. You're not going to like what I have to say, and I understand that. We are not activists. We're advocates.
I understand that. I need to be an activist.
So that's fine. When the numbers are verified through BOCES and through state, you have a FOIL request in. If that document is available, meaning does BOCES or the state produce that document, the difference between opting out, refusing, students who aren't in attendance for other reasons are coded, that document will certainly be released. Until then, we work off of verified numbers and not speculation. And so there are any number of districts. These conversations occur between and among superintendents. Some release them, some don't. And our decision was to not release those numbers. Also, there is also, as Mr. Barnowski indicated this earlier, there are FERPA issues. When you release numbers for individual schools, the numbers can show so small that you might actually trace down the names of students who opted out or didn't opt out. One way or the other, someone could apply pressure to those people, and that's not our role to release that information. So indeed, we didn't, and I have no problem saying I made that decision. So as we move forward, when the information is verifiable from the state, then we will release it. It's about 15%. I can tell you that because those numbers can't be traced. So it has 14 to 15% for math. It was a little lower for EL.
And let's keep in mind also, as much as we share your concerns, we do believe we have been effective. Our superintendent's message, as well as his joining forces with other superintendents, and as well, New York State School Board, have been addressing this with their voices. And I do believe your position, as you have taken that with other parents, and certainly ours, has made whatever movement of mine that resulted in the governor making certain accommodations, which were never done in a budget before. Budget's not usually attending to tests or policies or children. They're attending to numbers and aid, etc. So I agree that this is a serious issue, and we do as well over here. But we also kind of believe in our methods, too.
I have heard over and over that your hands are tied. And I've heard in many ways your hands are tied. And it is up to the parents, as taxpayers and as voters, to take this into their hands. And by keeping the numbers from us, you basically thwart us. You know, the resolution against high-stakes testing was a gesture. It didn't actually do anything.
I beg to differ, Mrs. Verity. I have to say, I think, you know, and I don't often get upset, but I think that there is barely a superintendent out there that has been a staunch advocate for the students of their district with relation to the amount of standardized tests that are being administered to their kids. And I am not going to hold rallies. That is not my role. Mrs. Verity, please let me finish. So the idea that somehow it was a farce, or that it was just, well then, I'm sorry, what was your word? I missed it then. A gesture. So the idea that it was a gesture, and all of the advocacy efforts that we've engaged in, which include all kinds of activities that have been documented and talked about here at this meeting, I take exception to. The fact that we will tell you that only 15% of the students opted out, as opposed to identifying the exact numbers all the time, I don't think takes away from that.
Ms. Berry, what number are you looking? What number are you looking for?
When I said a gesture, I didn't mean that in a negative way. You didn't accomplish anything specifically.
Right.
So
I disagree.
Okay.
There have been all kinds of changes to the way the state is implementing the Common Core assessments, and I would certainly absolutely indicate that it's in large part based on the efforts of districts such as ours and the work that we've done. That's not to diminish the work that you and your organization are doing. But from our side, we have our role to play and you have yours. That's the role that we play. And I might add, very effectively.
My next question. Many districts are now refusing to administer the field test. Field tests are taking place at the intermediate level in both Sawmill and Burke, at the middle school, and at our high school. In our Common Core focus group, I was told that if we give the state test, we are also obligated to give the field test. We have had some lawyers look into it, and they have not found anything that says that we must administer the field test. I can name districts right now that are sending back the field test, which includes Syosset and Jericho. Our students have been tested enough at this point. We have a $32 million contract with Pearson, and yet we give them free market research.
Mr. Barnowski, yes. So say, for another district I represent, I'm researching this as of today and looking through the Commission's regulations and seeing if those tests are mandatory. I don't have an answer. The issue came to me earlier today.
Well, I would just like it to be something that the district considers at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Fusco?
I just want to say that I'm kind of upset to hear that you guys spent $4,000 for that legal advice when you could have just picked up the phone and called the controller's office, and they would have explained the whole system right to you like they did to myself. You might not be violating the law, but you're violating the spirit of the law by estimating your expenditures to artificially inflate next year's budget. So the controller is hip to what's going on. He would have gave you the same advice.
I would say that they didn't cite New Rochelle.
Excuse me?
They did not cite the New Rochelle School District for what you're indicating here.
Well, I'm not saying you're doing apples to apples, and you're loading all of the unexpended surplus into our reserve funds, like they might have done. What I'm saying is the controller's office is citing districts all over New York for overestimating their expenditures to circumvent the 4% tax cap. And that's what we're doing in this district.
Did you have a chance to read the New Rochelle comptroller's report?
I might have, I don't know if recall.
So in that report, they're not cited for overloading their reserves or their unapplied fund balance, and you can identify how much they underspend their budget, and then they can certainly indicate that they apply all of that money back to the taxpayers. And the criticism was, be careful that you don't land yourself in fiscal stress.
Well, I agree that you're giving us back the tax money. You're rolling it over into the next budget, but what you're doing is you're artificially inflating the budget. I mean, if you didn't spend $50 million or $60 million, what's the number? You just artificially increase next year's budget by that same amount.
Well, first of all, we're not artificially inflating any number. And second, because Mr. Tampolini mentions one memo, he doesn't mention the follow-up memo, which explains where all of that money is and why it's there. So there is a second memo that's a follow-up that indicates where all that money is and why it's there. And then, if it's between 3 and 4%, as New Rochelle was, as we are, they weren't cited for that. So where is the line? I'm guessing the comptroller's decided it's above 3.5%.
Well, I don't want to be argumentative with you, but I think you're misleading the audience by saying it's 3 or 4%, because what you're doing is you're just using the expenditures over revenues surplus. That's where you're getting your 3% from. You're not including the unexpended budget surplus, which, by the controller's own words, gets added to that number to give you a total. If you want to say, you want to add that number together, then we're at about 8%.
I think, although I don't want to be argumentative either, and certainly I'm not misleading the public, I think there is, I'm not really sure how to say this, but disagreement or misunderstanding about the numbers. So that, as Mrs. Newman has explained any number of times, there is the amount that we under-expend, and then there is the amount of revenue that comes into the district, and we never go over the 4% because all of the money is then subsequently applied. We don't use it for reserves, we don't hold on to it, we don't do anything with it. It is in surplus. It is given back. So I don't know what else to say about that one. I think I've said as much as I care to tonight.
Do we have 6 to 7 weeks left of the school year? Do we have the estimate of what the unexpended budget surplus is going to be for the current year that we're in?
I don't know that it's been updated since the last time we did it. So this time there is no number of an estimate other than what it was probably 5 or 6 weeks ago. So well, it's still in that 3 to 4% mark.
So 3% of 179 million. What the budget surplus is, what you're projecting?
No, that's not a surplus. That's how much we're under-expending the budget.
Under-expended budget surplus.
No, it's not a surplus. It's how much we're under-expending, because then we give it back to the taxpayers.
Right, so 4% of $180 million would be about $11 or $12 million.
Huh? No. 4% of 180 is 7.2.
7.2.
I'm using your numbers. It's not 4% of...
Well, you're not using my numbers, you're using his
No,
numbers.
you just said 4% of 180 is 11 million. I'm telling you 4% of 180 is 7.2. I'm just correcting your math. You have said you've had fuzzy math before. I'm correcting fuzzy math.
Time out again. Okay. We're not getting. I don't want to have a verbal debate up here again about numbers. We've had this conversation about 6 times. So, thank you.
Move on.
Well, I did want to know what the unexpended surplus is.
They don't want to
Unexpended budget surplus. And then I guess the last question is, have we heard anything back from the state legislator about their proposal to offer refunds to the school districts that don't raise their taxes above?
It was in the Commack budget flyer with the question and answer session. I don't. Well, I do have to state, you and I live in East Northport, and we did not get it in the mail. It is online. Okay.
You know what the answer is? I assume you read it?
What? Well, I read it because I wrote part of it.
Did the legislature pass?
Yes, the proposal right now is any homeowner who gets a star, who's eligible for the star and makes less than $500,000 a year will be made whole for this year's tax increase as long as we come in at or under the cap, which is us.
And the question was, if we had a 0% increase,
you get 0.
We would still get that 2%.
No, you get 0. You're going to get the tax increase.
But that's not what the legislature was passing. So is your answer no, the legislature didn't pass that?
No, I'm telling you what the legislature passed. The legislature passed saying you will get a rebate equal to your property tax increase if all of the other things met. So
you're not going to get like an extra bonus if you came in at 0.
If we came in at 0, you get 0.
That's what the proposal was from the legislature.
So they did not.
So they finalized it. I'll look into that. All right, that's it for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
One more quick question. Sorry. Do you ever feel like you're stuck in that movie Groundhog Day?
Yeah.
Thanks. if the comptroller did come in and do an audit, would there be an associated cost to the district? I'm assuming that marshaling all the records and cooperating with the comptroller and doing all that, there might be some.
As someone who has a not-for-profit client that went through one of these, that started actually Memorial Day weekend last year, the OAG, which is who does not-for-profits, the Office of Attorney General, has been in there now for 11 months. It's just hell. Literally, it's every single item, the amount of time, effort, and the other side is it automatically casts an aspersion on you. You know that when you read the paper and cops make an arrest, that's on the front page, but when you're found not guilty, nobody ever finds it, and that's exactly what would happen in this case.
Well, there would be some sort of financial...
There certainly are manpower costs associated with it.
Right, so that would take away from the general operation, the district, whose purpose is education, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
In Jared, my, other roles on the library, there's a lot of libraries that are now undergoing the scrutiny, so the controller's office is actually focusing a lot more on the small districts right now as compared to the school districts. And what they've seen actually is they have to actually go out and hire outside people, like business managers and stuff like that, because they're so occupied during their time for about a 6-month period of time that they're totally swamped, that they cannot conduct their normal business. So they're hiring 2 to 3 people just to get their regular business done to satisfy this audit, which usually amounts to policies and updates of procedures, just washing controls.
Right, so the district has to hire outside people.
The actual libraries have to hire outside people, and they incur the cost, especially, and their tax caps are usually a lot lower. Some of them are right now facing under 1% tax caps.
Wow. So despite the residual benefit that there could be from clearing the district, it sounds like there would be a significant cost. All right, thank you.
Cost, yes.
Anyone else? I'll make the motion to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Hartman. All in favor? It's unanimous.